Members of council are here and accounted for. This evening, there was a sunshine meeting which will bring in legislation by members of city council for their consideration. However, there was a special meeting called, and we'll start off with the special meeting, and I will ask the clerk, hearing no objections, to read the communications to the call for the special meeting.
To all honorable members of council, pursuant to the authority of section 731.44 of the revised code of the state of Ohio and section 111.02 of the codified ordinances of the city of Steubenville, 1957 as amended, you are hereby notified that a special meeting of city council will be held on Tuesday, December 16, 2014 at 7:30 p.m. in the council chambers. This meeting is to be held for the purpose of ordinance number 2014-137, ordinance authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with the Ohio Department of Transportation for the State Route 7 and University Boulevard Intersection Improvement Project, JEF-7-17.29, PID 81314, and perform all necessary functions that may be required to complete said project. Ordinance number 2014-140, and ordinance adopting a revenue tax budget for the year ending December 31st, 2015, for the purpose of providing that performance will be specified by plan and projection and declaring an emergency. Ordinance number 2014-141, an ordinance to make appropriations for the current expenditures and other expenditures of the city of Steubenville within the general funds, special revenue funds, capital project funds, debt service funds, enterprise funds, internal service funds, expendable trust funds, and non-expendable trust funds for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2015, and declaring an emergency. Ordinance number 2014-142, an ordinance amending ordinance number 2014-106, adopting a revenue tax budget for the year ending December 31st, 2014, for the purpose of providing that performance will be specified by plan and projection and declaring an emergency. Ordinance number 2014-143, and ordinance amending ordinance number 2014-107 to make appropriations for the current expenditures and other expenditures of the city of Steubenville within the general funds, special revenue funds, capital project funds, debt service funds, enterprise funds, internal service funds, expendable trust funds, and non-expendable trust funds for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2014, and declaring an emergency. Ordinance number 2014-146, an ordinance amending section 191.11A of the codified ordinances of the city of Steubenville. Sincerely, Frankie Anderson, clerk of council.
You heard the reading of the communications calling for a special meeting on December 16, 2014. Hearing no objections, it will be entered into the record. Hearing no objections, it is so ordered. Ordinance number 2014-137 by the Service Committee, Mr. Metcalf, Mr. Dioretto, Mr. Paul, for its third and final reading.
Ordinance number 2014-137, an ordinance authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with the Ohio Department of Transportation for the State Route 7 and University Boulevard Intersection Improvement Project, JEF-7-17.29, PID 81314, perform all necessary functions that may be required to complete said project.
You heard the reading of ordinance number 2014-137. Is there anyone wishing to speak on it? Please come forward, state their name and address. Members of council? Question. Roll call.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Dioretto?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Ms. Kurto?
Aye.
Mr. Metcalf?
Aye.
Mr. Paul?
Aye.
Mr. Villamagna?
Aye.
So move. Ordinance number 2014-137 totally adopted. Ordinance number 2014-140 by the Finance Committee, Mr. Metcalf, Mr. Davis, Mr. Johnson.
Ordinance number 2014-140, an ordinance adopting a revenue tax budget for the year ending December 31st, 2015, for the purpose of providing that performance will be specified by plan and projection and declaring an emergency.
You heard the reading of ordinance number 2014-140. Is there anyone wishing to speak on it? Please come forward, state their name and address. No, members of council. Mr. Davis.
Yes, Your Honor, I would just like to remind council when we make these votes this evening that ordinance number 140, 141, 142, and 143 are being presented as an emergency because it is important to pass the budget and get it done this evening. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Mr. Johnson.
Yes, Your Honor. I have a couple comments on the budget and the budget process that brought us to tonight's votes.
the 14 budget, and when I'm talking about these budgets, I'm talking about the general fund and the safety fund. The 14 budget will be balanced, which is great. The 15 budget spends about $700,000 more than it takes in, which is not so great. Expenses are increasing about 3.8% in 2015, and revenues are falling 1.1% in 2015. So there's a negative 5% swing that we're going to be facing in 2015. As I stated last week, I'm against deficit spending. It will risk our bond rating, and if it continues, the general fund will go broke, and in fact, the city projects it to go broke in 2017. Now, concerning the budget process, it started out great with budget hearings. It was great to hear from the department heads. I believe we should have followed that up with the discussion of the draft budget by council as a whole prior to sunshining the legislation last week. It would have been beneficial to everybody, including the public. As Kenny mentioned, we are passing these as emergencies tonight. I'm not quite sure why we planned it for emergencies. The budget we're going to vote on tonight is the same budget we had as a draft a month ago. We could have timed it better, so we could have had 3 readings. And every budget is amended. Tonight's budget will be amended in the beginning of the year. So I would hope going forward we do not do these as emergencies. Now, there should be enough time in the process to allow council to vote as they see fit, but that will not happen tonight. I disagree with the budget, but if I vote no, I risk shutting down the city because we will not have the authority to spend any money come January 1st. So I can't risk voting no, because if I'm joined by 2 of my colleagues, the city will be effectively shut down. The only realistic option is to vote yes on these budgets, even though I disagree with them. So I will vote yes tonight. But unless changes are made to the process, if I'm faced with the same scenario next year, I will vote no.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Metcalf.
Yes, Your Honor, just following up, Mr. Johnson and Mr. Davis, I also wanted to actually thank Stacy, her staff, and all the department heads for this process. There are concerns, yes, but I think tonight we've made great strides from the past, and we actually have the ability to have a balanced budget for 2014 and have a permanent budget in place for 2015. And yes, we do need to look at this so we don't shut down the city come January 1, nor have our employees not getting any paychecks either come January 1. So like Kenny and Mike, we need to vote yes on this in order to let the city move forward come January 1, 2015. And again, Stacy, I know this was your last meeting. I would like to thank you for everything you've done since you started in May. You've been just phenomenal in everything you've completed for us, and my best wishes to you in your new career, your new endeavors, and your family to have a wonderful holiday season. Thank you, Stacy, for everything you've done.
Thank you, Mr. Metcalf. Mr. Bill Magna.
Yes, Mayor. I want to reiterate what Mike Johnson said. I do not believe in deficit spending whatsoever. I've never done it at my house, and I won't do it here. This emergency process is getting way out of control, in my opinion. We got 5 ordinances, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 are emergencies. I don't think it's fair to the department heads to give them money that they cannot spend. We're going to give, we have in the budget money that the department heads will not be able to spend. We will have to take it back off of. I do believe the budget hearings that we had started out good, but Mike has a financial background. I don't. I labor through some of this stuff, but I do read it and I go through it, and from what I see, I don't like the deficit part of it. So federal government does the same thing. They push everything through at the end, and then they say, well, we have to do this or we're going to shut down government, and that's how all the court gets passed through. So I think there was plenty of time for us to sit down and discuss this and go through this with the department heads and take away from their wish list what they had. I don't think it's fair to them. I don't think it's fair to the citizens of the city that are paying the taxes, and I will not vote for it for that simple reason.
Thank you, Mr. Magnum. Ms. Curdo.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm sorry, is my mic on? Thank you, Your Honor. On these ordinances, when I came in council, this is my 4th year voting on a budget. And for the past 3 times, I've had to vote on a budget that was not pleasing because we were doing things as in layoffs, we were closing buildings, we were stopping services to the citizens. I look at this budget as a positive. This is the first time we're not closing things, we're not laying people off. We have things open, we are providing the services that we need to. Sure, I don't agree with everything in this budget, but I think that we got a whole year for us to look at it, for us to continue to work on the process for 2016 and 2017. If we don't start looking at how we can make our city better instead of making cuts, I think that we're going to not only be in a deficit, but then we're going to be in trouble because we're going to be sitting there looking at that the city has fallen apart and we didn't do anything to fix it at the same time. So I am going to vote in favor of this budget, and I am pleased to vote in favor of this budget. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Curdo. Any other member of council wishing to speak on ordinance number 2014-140? Mr. Dioretta.
I don't like tough spending either, but I'm going to have to vote for it. And I hope that we don't make a habit of taking money from the sacred cow, that is our surplus that we got from the lawsuit with DMZ, $340,000. The mayor just gave us a nice brochure, so I hope next year some of these buildings, and we have some economic growth in this town, so they can buy some water. And I know we make amends to pay some of these bills that have been going haywire the last 5 or 10 years. People haven't been paying their bills, and that's part of the problem. And I hope this council and the city manager, the mayor, go head on with me and get those bills paid, or make sure somebody pays it instead of the regular customers. Battery died.
Thank you, Mr. Dioretta. Thank you, Mr. Dioretta. Is there any other member of council wishing to speak on ordinance number 2014-140?
Question.
Roll call.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. DiLoretto?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Ms. Kurtall?
Aye.
Mr. Metcalf?
Aye.
Mr. Paul?
Aye.
Mr. Villamagna?
No.
So moved. Ordinance number 2014-140, duly adopted. Ordinance number 2014-141 by the Finance Committee, Mr. Metcalf, Mr. Davis, Mr. Johnson.
Ordinance number 2014-141, an ordinance to make appropriations for the current expenditures and other expenditures of the city of Steubenville within the general fund, special revenue funds, capital project funds, debt service funds, enterprise funds, internal service funds, expendable trust funds, and non-expendable trust funds for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2015, and declaring an emergency.
You heard the reading of ordinance number 2014-141. Is there anyone wishing to speak on it? Please come forward, state their name and address. Not members council.
Question.
Roll call.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. DiLoretto?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Ms. Kurtall?
Aye.
Mr. Metcalf?
Aye.
Mr. Paul?
Aye.
Mr. Villamagna?
No.
So moved. Ordinance number 2014-141, duly adopted. Ordinance number 2014-142 by the Finance Committee, Mr. Metcalf, Mr. Davis, Mr. Johnson.
Ordinance number 2014-142, an ordinance amending ordinance number 2014-106, adopting a revenue tax budget for the year ending December 31st, 2014, for the purpose of providing that performance will be specified by plan and projection and declaring an emergency.
You heard the reading of ordinance number 2014-142. Is there anyone wishing to speak on it? Please come forward, state their name and address. Not members of council.
Question.
Roll call.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. DiLoretto?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Ms. Kurtall?
Aye.
Mr. Metcalf?
Aye.
Mr. Paul?
Aye.
Mr. Villamagna?
No.
So moved. Ordinance number 2014-142, duly adopted. Ordinance number 2014-143 by the Finance Committee, Mr. Makeup, Mr. Davis, Mr. Johnson.
Ordinance number 2014-143, an ordinance amending ordinance number 2014-107 to make appropriations for the current expenditures and other expenditures of the city of Steubenville within the general fund, special revenue funds, capital project funds, debt service funds, enterprise funds, internal service funds, expendable trust funds, and non-expendable trust funds for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2014, and declaring an emergency.
You heard the reading of ordinance number 2014-143. Is there anyone wishing to speak on it? Please come forward, state their name and address. Not members council.
Question.
Roll call.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. DiLoretto?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Ms. Kurtolo?
Aye.
Mr. Metcalf?
Aye.
Mr. Paul?
Aye.
Mr. Villamagna?
No.
So moved. Ordinance number 2014-143 duly adopted. Ordinance number 2014-146 by the Finance Committee, Mr. Makeup, Mr. Davis, Mr. Johnson, for its first reading.
Ordinance number 2014-146, an ordinance amending section 191.11A of the codified ordinances of the city of Steubenville.
You heard the first reading of ordinance number 2014-146. Its second reading will be scheduled for January 6, 2015. The third and final reading will be scheduled for January 20th, 2015. That will conclude the ordinances before City Council for the special meeting. May I have a motion for an adjournment, and then we'll move into the sunshine.
Make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
It's been readily moved and second that we adjourn the special meeting. Roll call.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. DiLoretto?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Ms. Kurtolo?
Aye.
Mr. Metcalf?
Aye.
Mr. Paul?
Aye.
Mr. Villamagna?
Aye.
So moved. The special meeting is now adjourned. We will now move into the sunshine meeting of City Council. Let the record reflect that all members of council are in attendance. With that, the purpose of this meeting is to bring forth legislation that will be considered by City Council at a future date. With that, we'll start off with Mr. Davis.
I have nothing this evening, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Mr.
No
DiLoretto?
report.
Thank you, Mr. DiLoretto. Mr. Johnson?
Nothing, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Ms. Kurtolo?
Yes, Your Honor, I have one up under Buildings and Grounds Committee, an ordinance amending ordinance number 2014-75, the existing table of organization of the city of Steubenville. That'd be all, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Kurtolo. We'll continue on with Mr. Metcalf.
Your Honor, I've got a few things to do this evening. I gave you mine, you stole it. First of all, I'd like to make a motion that following the sunshine meeting, we go into executive session for discussions of contract negotiations and also personnel, which is specific to the water superintendent position. Basically, Tim wanted to see us a little bit longer before we break for the Christmas holidays. I need a second to my motion.
Second.
Thank you. I know Kenny, you wanted to go home.
It's been regularly moved in second that we move into executive session following public forum for the discussion of personnel matters, water superintendent, and also union negotiations. Roll call.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. DiLoretto?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Ms. Kurtolo?
Aye.
Mr. Metcalf?
Aye.
Mr. Paul?
Aye.
Mr. Villamagna?
Aye.
So moved. We will move into executive session following public forum. Mr. Metcalf.
Secondly, legislation, the first piece out of finance is the Lennon House certificates. Everyone should have had them for the last couple of weeks to look at. It's, ordinance authorizing directing the approval of expenditures with a purchase order over $3,000 pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Section 5705.41 and declaring an emergency. And the one thing I'd like to add on this, there's only 6. Stacy, good job of getting us down to where we need to get this down to. Thank you. The second piece is under Public Utilities Committee. And the ordinance, we're getting to the ordinance number on there, Gary, 2014.15. What would that change? Okay, we'll do a different change. Okay, an ordinance authorizing and directing the finance director to establish specific uses for the sanitation fund and declaring an emergency. This is going to basically help us with our bulk pickups, leaf collection, street sweeping, tree trimming, and recycling programs that we have put in the CIP and also in the budget for next year. So that's those two pieces of legislation that I have. Lastly, meetings. January 6th, we are going to have a Finance Committee meeting at 6:30. Specific discussion will be solutions to the general fund. Are we going to look at safety levy, or we're going to look at an income tax increase? And all that also falls into line with the first reading of 2014-146. Are we going to do the reader rollback as well? So all these discussions are going to take place. January 6th will be the first meeting at 6:30. Finance will continue on January 13th, also at 6:30, to continue this discussion. If we decide that this council wants to put a levy on the ballot, we have to do it before February 4th, 5th, one of those 2 days.
So it's emergency day, right? Or
It would have to be.
another emergency.
So we have to decide if and what we're going to do to general fund. January 13th also will be an Economic Development Committee meeting at 6 o'clock. And that will be to start or further continue the branding discussions. And then lastly, utilities will continue on January 20th, and that will be, hopefully we'll have in our hands the information from the JP Green team to continue discussions on that. Your Honor, that's all I have this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Metcalf. The clerk is recording January 6th Finance Committee meeting 6:30, January 13th, 6:30, Finance continuing, January 20th, Utility Committee. The clerk will facilitate the proper notices. I believe some of them have already been issued to the public and to the media. That's all you have, Mr. Metcalf? Thank you, Mr. Metcalf. We'll continue on to Mr. Paul.
This evening, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. Mr. Bill Magna?
Mayor, I don't know, this is that it now? Should I wait till next week to ask a question?
Yeah, it was just sunshine tonight. There'll be discussions at the, well, next year.
Next year.
Thank you, Mr. Bill Magna. That will conclude the sunshining of legislation. Before we move to public forum, I do want to take this opportunity to, first of all, as it was already indicated by the chairman of the Finance Committee, to thank Stacy Williams for her service to the city of Steubenville. We do wish you well in your future endeavors. We know that the job that you're going to is something that you always dreamed of, and there's some family value to it. So we want to wish you well. We also want to take this opportunity tonight to thank all the department heads for a year well done. I know that there was a lot of challenges, and every single department stepped up to the plate to move the city forward. And I know I could speak on behalf of our city manager and this council. Thank you, thank you, thank you, and a special Merry Christmas and a Happy Holidays to you and your family. I also want to point out that tonight the Beautification Committee is moving through our community, judging the residential lighting contest. That judging will continue tomorrow night, and here in the near future, I believe Ms. Curtle already made arrangements with the Herald Star and all, that the winners will be listed. So we're looking forward to that. And of course, on behalf of myself and City Council, we want to wish all of our residents a very Merry Christmas and a safe and happy New Year. With that being said, I want to end on a positive note. I made a presentation last Thursday at the Board of County Commissioners meeting. I know this council, or the city of Steubenville, I should say, has been involved in the adoption of a CIP plan. and the CIP plan really reflect on economic opportunities, orderly growth for Jefferson County, including the city of Steubenville. This council back in 2009 adopted a resolution investing their support into the plan. 2008, under the leadership of Gary Fulton at the Jefferson County Chamber of Commerce, suggested that Jefferson County should put a comprehensive plan together in several different areas. We pulled 15 different agencies throughout Jefferson County, including the city of Steubenville's support, to develop a plan. And the purpose of the plan was really to strengthen Jefferson County by creating collaborative partnerships. The plan outlined 3 areas: the enhancement, the quality of the community and family life, improve and expand infrastructure, and stimulate workforce and economic growth. Over the last 5 years, or a little better, the partners have been meeting and developing and moving forward with this plan. But there became 5 of us. We sooner or later became known as the 5 Amigos, met monthly over the last 5 years. And we thought it would be in our best interest to report back to our partners and to the citizens of the city of Steubenville on the partnership for growth in Jefferson County. I have presented to each member of council a brochure that we have developed, and if you read through it, there's all kinds of activities happening not only in our city, and you can see by the highlights of some of the pictures of Steubenville, but throughout Jefferson County. Through this holiday season, as we reflect on 2014, we should be counting our blessings and looking at the assets that we have, not only in our city, but in Jefferson County. I had the distinct honor this past year, once again, to not only be involved in a lot of the decision-making in the city of Steubenville, but also on the county level as the executive director of the Jefferson County Regional Planning Commission. We are extremely proud of our accomplishments, and let me tell everybody that we will move not only Steubenville, but Jefferson County forward into the future for economic opportunities. I ask everyone, there's some extra pamphlet brochures up on the counter, to take one of these brochures, read it, and if you have any questions, they could talk to any of our partners that are listed on the event. With that, we will now move into public forum. Is there anyone wishing to speak to the city council on city business? Please come forward, state your name and address. If not, once again, Merry Christmas, everyone. Have a safe New Year. And we will now move into the executive session. Please clear the table.